to learn about you, man. It's real interesting. I see you like on the other side of the world and everything, and I see you're doing big things with SEO. But I want to kind of learn the whole, everything behind it. How did you end up in the Philippines, and how did you get into the junk removal industry?
You want to learn about me, and I want to learn about you. I'm like my nickname for you is like Big Papa Pump.
I love it. I love it.
Like they're already seeing you. Well, first on the channel, then I started seeing you. You know, you're in the bodybuilding and everything too, so that's pretty cool. And
Hell yeah.
no, Andrew's starting his workout journey too, so that's pretty cool. So everybody's kind of into it. Xavier's into it too, and stuff like that. So that's cool. Um, Not so much like I used to be, but I actually used to be a certified personal trainer many years ago into bodybuilding and everything too. So it's kind of cool seeing that. But so SEO wise, and how did I come over to the Philippines? And that long story short, essentially, I got started in SEO 20 plus years ago before Google Penguin and Panda. If anyone knows what that is, that's back in the good old days of SEO where you could pretty much spam the, you know, SERPs to death and get on page one without any problem. And then I went to school. I was I was working. I was actually an assistant financial officer. I did bookkeeping and stuff like that. Got tired of cleaning up someone's books, and then they'd let you go, get fired. Never have nothing to fall back on. And so I wound up going and checking out school, Kaiser University. And my teacher, when I went there, I just went there for, we were doing art, and I loved art when I was in school. I was not a jock or anything. And even though I wish nowadays I went back, I wish I was into sports and stuff instead of art. But got into that, and one of the assignments he gave us, this is actually how I got into working out too, was through him. My professor was John Downs. I remember coming there, I was close to 400 pounds at the time, and he showed us I forget one of the ones that it was a documentary on overweight and obesity, because when the problem is whenever you sit behind the computer, you ain't got nothing to do, you're not out, you're not moving around, stuff like that. But me and him became really close, and then one of the first assignments he gave us was finding a web design client. And this is where I first really discovered people actually pay you outside of a job. I really didn't know anything about entrepreneurship or opening a business or anything like that. And then, so I got I was doing dog breeding website. I paid, it was like $500. And for me, that was like, holy crap, $500 for a website. And, I was used to barely making $700 a week for, fucking 40 hours. And then I started getting more work. And it came a point in that time I was married to my first wife, really bad relationship and everything. But I took a break, took a sabbatical from, if you will, school, because I couldn't deal with the pressure from the home and school and college. And I started picking up work off of Craigslist. Anybody know Craigslist? Craigslist, back in the good old days, you could post on it, get work on it. Nowadays, not as much as it used to be. Still can use it to generate leads, but not like I used to. That then became, I didn't go back to school because I was, basically making more money than my professor at the time. So doing part-time work. And then I had one of the guys I forget his name. He was a Jewish fella, Ron Marcus. So I remember names. He introduced me to another. He was a real estate guy. He's a millionaire on paper, and he at one point even invited me to come move to Panama Republic because he was going to have me do his SEO. By the time I was married with 2 kids and stuff, told him no, turned it down. I kind of wish I almost did, but I'm glad I didn't, because I would never have met my second wife, which is amazing. But he then introduced me to another fella. Now, I did his website. This was on Magento. And he asked me, he said, so for example, he goes, hey, can you, I love the website you did. Can you get me on page 1 of Google? And I'm like, I knew nothing about SEO. Didn't know what it was. Didn't know what search engine optimization. Didn't know nothing about getting anybody on page 1. And I just asked him, I said, well, how much does it pay? And he said, $2,000. And I said, yes, I do. I can get you on page 1. And I went home and I started self-teaching myself, going online, Googling it, trying to find out how to, what is a backlink, what's on page, what's technical, what's all that stuff. And excuse me. So that's how I got started in it. Excuse me. And then from there, I went. At one point, I had about 30 freelance clients that I was personally working on myself with one other person. And that person is still with me to today. They are a freelancer. Only thing I ever knew was freelancing. I didn't know nothing about virtual assistants. I didn't know what a remote worker was. I just knew you can go on places like Legit and Upwork and hire people. Okay, so it wasn't like I knew any of that. And I didn't know how to even find people. I just, went on the forums and said, hey, I'm looking for someone to do this, which is the worst thing you can do, honestly, is to go on there and just say, hey, I'm looking for a web designer. You're going to get bombarded with a bunch of people that are desperate for money and you have no way of going through, if you will, the crap and figuring out who's actually good at what they say they are good at. So I had a lot of ups and downs, little rough experiences. Wish I hadn't went through, but it is what it is. And if you want to be successful, you got to go through the shit. So then I got married, obviously, second wife, Rowena. She's amazing. I love her to death. And I met her online, met her on Facebook. I went through time. It's like, this is some people don't want to hear, but I actually reverted to Islam. My wife was working in Saudi or Abu Dhabi. And I know most people will be like, you're like the most un-Muslim person I'll ever meet, but I am what I am. I'm a good old Southern boy. But I met her online. She was working in Abu Dhabi as an OFW. And OFW is called an Overseas Filipino Worker. So she left her 3-month-old daughter named Lila Rowena, I call her Princess, to go work abroad. I met her right after I got out of my divorce. So this, when me and my wife had our first wife had her ups and downs. I don't know if anybody ever been through divorce, but they send you through counseling and all that other crap. Well, this time when they sent me through this counseling shit, I was like, everybody was depressed. I was like, I'm not depressed at all. I'm fucking amazingly happy and everything because I was ready to end the shit, right? Get it done. I'd met my wife, Rowena, and met her. And then she was working at another time. She's working in, first time was Kuwait, second time was Saudi. Abu Dhabi, different than Saudi. So she was working as an OFW. The thing is with OFWs is they have to actually leave their family, leave their children. Most of the time it's women. Sometimes it's husbands that do this, but generally speaking, it's the women. And for me, we started Rank Fortress because it's like they shouldn't have to. We want to give them an opportunity where they don't have to do that. They literally, my wife came into a country, she never spoke any Arabic, nothing. And she had to not only bust her butt working from like 5 a.m. until midnight most of the time, especially during Ramadan where they have hundreds of guests. And they're talking about guests from Hollywood and everywhere because the person she worked for at the time was one of the royal princes. Okay. So she was in a good situation but a lot of OFWs, they actually are not in good situations. That over here, they tell them, oh, it's amazing. You get to go to a country you don't know and you'll have a nice house, a nice living. Well, that's not always the case. And then many times the case is as soon as you arrive and they meet you, they take your passport, they take your cell phone, they take your laptop. You have no form of communication. You're working for them. You're in a contract for generally 2 to 3 years. you are basically a house slave. Okay, and if you get a good boss, they treat you amazing. If you get a bad boss, they treat you just like that. You're a slave. You have no rights, pretty much. So I met her, and so for me, when that relationship was totally different than my first relationship. Obviously, I moved her over to the United States because I came over here, met her, did everything in the Philippines, all that stuff. I brought her to the Philippines, met her in the Philippines, took pictures, did the whole visa process, all that stuff, and then moved to the United States. Probably a year into it, I wound up having. At this time, I had bariatric surgery. I was working for a place called EMed. EMed is a medical clinic, and I did SEO for all of his companies. I came in, he wasn't ranking within less than a month. I had him on page 1 for primary care clinic, things of that nature. He does pain clinic, primary care clinic, lung clinic, laser hair removal, tattoo removal, all types of shit. So I got into a lot of the medical. I was in the medical for several years prior to meeting her, so about 5 years in medical. And then I moved to West Virginia. This is when I'd met her, married her, brought her over here. And then I had bariatric surgery. I lost a lot of weight. There are times I wish I hadn't had bariatric surgery. There are times I wish I just stuck with doing it the normal way. But there are times I was glad I had bariatric surgery. So, I mean, it is what it is.
What part of West Virginia did you live in?
I lived in Paw Paw, West Virginia. It's got less people in it than the province I live in now. I'll put it that way.
Gotcha.
I love West Virginia in the sense that I love the mountains and the streams and stuff, but I was born and raised in Jacksonville, Florida, so I love the beach.
Very nice.
And I love the whole beach atmosphere and stuff. I was 5 minutes from basically Jacksonville Beach. Beach.
I'm a Florida guy. I got a condo in West Palm.
Yeah, that's for me. I mean, it's like I have friends that are down in Miami and stuff. I've been down to Miami before. I told Sal, the women down in Miami and stuff. I'm like, they're 50, 60 years old and they look like they're in their fucking 20s.
I used to live in South Beach, but I want to keep my girl, and also I had to go up to West Palm Beach. Miami ruined my first relationship, so I was smart.
Yeah, I tell people all the time is that if you're in Miami and you are in a faithful relationship, I give you props.
yeah, it's definitely hard over there.
Because I can imagine, but I mean, I remember going into the mall. I felt like I was walking into a club.
Yep.
I'm like,
I mean, the gym was literally a club on Thursdays. I used to go in my building. We had the David Barden gym, and they would bring in the DJ, and they would shut off all the lights and have all these crazy neons. And you're working out, and you're like, you forget that you're even in the gym. You feel like you're ready to dance and all.
Yeah, I remember when I went there, and I was like in the mall. I'm sitting just looking for normal shit, like you're going to get some clothes or something. Because I was down there with my friend Larry, and he was doing a photo shoot or something, and I was like, this is crazy. I went back. I'm going back to the house. I'm going back to the condo because this is wrong. This is bad. Some bad gonna happen. Like you about to break your neck every time. But nevertheless, so we lived in West Virginia, Paw Paw, West Virginia. Great place to live if you got work. If you don't got work, it's a terrible place to live. What I mean by that is like you can't get work there. It's not like you're going to be able to work there. You have to drive out to Washington, D.C. or Baltimore and other places. So this is actually interesting is where I got into storage. I love storage wars. I love buying stuff and flipping it. Me and my wife used to find stuff in dumpsters, like couches and stuff, pull it out, and then turn around and flip it. And people would tell me, well, you only made $20. I said, well, it's $20 you didn't make. Yeah. And then we started going to introduce her to auctions. My friend Ralph Michelle introduced me to auctions. I would start going to auctions, and I bought couches and jackets and computers and shit. They're in auctions totally different than a storage unit when you buy that. But the auctions, I remember going in there and you'd have, for instance, hotels will come in and renovate entire hotels and they get rid of 100 or whatever couch sets. And I came in and I bought 20 or 30 of them and I would turn around and flip them. So me and my wife, you get them for like 10, 20 bucks. When I done an auction, I turn around and flip couches for $200 to $250 for the set. And we saved up a lot of our money doing that. And that's how I actually bought my plane tickets to come to the Philippines.
Wow. Nice.
With about $9,000 worth of couches that we had sold. And I had about $2,000 in my pocket when I came over here, was actually from buying things at auctions and junk removal. So that's actually, and it wasn't like a plan. I told Andrew and even Xavier after I think about it, says, God has got a sense of humor. If I've ever seen one, because there are things that just happen. They're kind of like, it's interesting when you look back on it in hindsight and stuff. But we used to buy all types of stuff doing that. And then we came right around that time. I had 2 big clients. This is one of the lessons I learned. I used to have only really big clients. I had like 3 or 4 small ones. Well, when those 2 big clients quit and said, hey, I no longer need your services, you're fucked. Really, you're just fucked. So now, like, I have big clients, I have small clients, I have other ventures that I get into. But then, knowing me, what winds up happening, I fall into depression because I'm like, what am I going to do? My mom and dad are in their upper 60s. I'm a Southern boy. I'm not going to move in with my mom and dad. I'm not going to burden them. But what can I do? I remember when I get depressed, I was suicidal. I was going through a lot of crap. And then I remember my wife, we called my mother-in-law over here in the Philippines and just come and visit. So he came and visit. We can't cancel our trip because it's non-refundable plane tickets. So we pack our suitcases and come over. And then I also, once we got there, then mother-in-law was like, why don't you, moral of the story, don't put all your fucking eggs in one basket. Exactly. One lesson I wish I'd learned when I was younger. Nevertheless, so got over here and mother-in-law was like, why don't you move here? And we were living on the farm, which is in Tulawas, and we had the electric bill was $20 a month. Water bill was probably $5 a month.
Oh,
I had chickens, goats, cows. I had no air con. I mean, we were on, we eat fish and rice and vegetables. And, so it was, you still had your needs taken care of as a point. I even tell people now, going back, if you see some of the happiest times in my life was not when I was running a huge agency, is actually when I was starting up, is when I was going through, if you will, the grind and the hustle and starting everything. So, back then, I mean, I remember doing some of my 3 or 4 clients that I had, I was doing it on data. I didn't have Wi-Fi because we're in the mountains. Okay. Didn't have quote unquote necessarily best equipment. I literally packed a computer I had and put it in my suitcase. And then it arrived damaged and I had to have it fixed. But nevertheless, then, my daughter gets married. She meets a Filipino, gets married, because I have 2 daughters and 1 son. My son just turned 18. My other daughter's 14. My other daughter's in her 20s. She's having my 3rd grandchild now. I'm actually going to go see her end of the month. Her name's Serafina. My son's name is Isaiah, and then my other daughter's name is Rowena or Lila. So she gets married, and she tells me, it's like, what type of business you want to start? I don't know. I'm in the freaking Philippines. What are they going to do? And so my wife goes, let's start a laundry shop. So here's another one. We started a laundry shop, and then we also sold in the laundry shop something they call okai okai over here. Okai okai is used clothing that they usually get from Dollar General stores. And they buy it in bulk, huge bales, and the stuff that they can't sell over at Dollar General or Salvation Army, they then in turn bulk up and sell it. So we bought those and started selling that stuff. And we have a lot of really good memories with the, if you will, the hustle part of it. I have the pictures. It's on my timeline if you've ever seen it. It's a pinned post at the top where I have my big long beard, look like fucking ZZ Top, and the laundry shop. So that's how we started that. And then that's right before COVID. And then right before COVID, my wife's like, why don't you try to find work and stuff? Because imagine the only time me and my wife, Rowena, we've ever had an argument was right before COVID, where we're sleeping on the floor. We slept on the floor in the laundry shop, and we'd stay the night there, pull down the guards at the front, the rolling door, and we'd sleep in there because that was the only place that had an air conditioning. We didn't have air conditioning in the house. And my daughter and them used to sleep with little tubes of ice you put in these plastic tubes, and we'd sit there and sleep with them on her chest so we could actually fall asleep. Because I'm a big dude and I like AC and cold. I get real hot real fast. So then she tells me, that's the only time we had an argument was really because it's like, money. You're hustling. You're doing everything you can. It seems like you can barely breathe. It's like there's a Christian song. It's like talking about walking on the water into the great unknown oceans. That song really means a lot to me, mainly because we've been through a lot of that crap. And there have been so many times where we feel like our nose is just above the water. And every time you think you're going to drown, another wave comes and pushes you down, and then you get pulled up. So my wife during that time, she goes, why don't you try to find clients? I really didn't want to start an agency. I tell people all the time, I don't like running an agency, didn't want to run an agency, because you deal with a lot of crap when you deal with SEO agencies specifically. Not business owners so much, but SEO agencies. I do white label SEO, and I also do junk removal SEO. But nevertheless, found a client. I went into Facebook groups, found a client. He hired me to do SEO for an American company. It paid me only $800 a month to do 160 hours worth of work. And I say that only to put it in perspective, is I used to make $7,000 a month, okay, for what I was doing. And I didn't work 160 hours. And then the same client is a good friend of mine today, John Signy. And he told me, so why don't you get clients? Because you got 20 years experience. And I'm like, okay, I'll start looking. And then I started looking, and I picked up a couple clients right before COVID. And then I brought in 2 people and I trained them. Put one on my left, put one on my right, said, let me show you how to do SEO audit. Let me show you how to do technical SEO. Let me show you how to do GMB SEO. I taught them myself everything. I still do the same to this day. I teach them physically with me next to them. I show them how to do it. I actually do it with them, and then I have them do it in front of me, and then I start giving them projects and testing them. And now we have a little over 80 staff in-house.
Wow.
So
went from you not wanting to run an agency to going absolutely nuts, and now you got 80 people, bro. You ain't playing around.
Yeah, we got 80 plus, and we got over 40 there during the day and another 40 something at night. So my office is attached to the house. It's a part of the house. I can literally open up my window in my room and look out, and I'll see the second floor. Like right now, I have a room over here where you have staff as well. There's probably about 10 in this room. And then we got the others in the other rooms as well. And